All right, well, I'll go ahead and get started here. Morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us for yet another month of our virtual Zoom meetings. Today, you might notice, yes, in fact, we're on Zoom meeting as opposed to Zoom webinar. And this will give us a better chance at the end to actually ask live questions of all of our members. So hopefully you're all still fairly familiar with this format. A couple things that might be useful to you are if you check around the video of myself, perhaps, there's a couple of options. You might be able to see that you can select a small active speaker video where you only see the active speaker, or you can set up video thumbnail videos so you can see the video of everybody that has the video on. So you might choose one of those to your liking. Please do, though, leave yourself on mute, at least till the end when we ask all the live questions. And of course, you probably want to leave your video off so that we don't see you actually walking around with your iPhones and so forth. But yeah, thank you a lot for joining us today. Let's see if I can advance the slides now. There we go. While the pandemic may be on its last legs, we still await to hear back from the SBP auditorium on when we will be able to return in person. Things are certainly looking better, though, so keep an eye on our website and the newsletters, and we'll let you know when we'll be meeting in person again. Until then, of course, we'll continue the live streaming on the third Saturday of each month. Our organization principals are Bill Lewis, our president, who also does an excellent job on our newsletter summaries, Jean Van Vliet, our director and treasurer, Steve Pendergast, our secretary and newsletter editor. Once again, those newsletters that these guys do are fantastic. Please do make sure that you read those from page 1 to page N. They really have a wealth of information, some great comics, write-ups of the previous month's meeting. Great job to those guys for their hard work. Bill Manning is a director and our videographer. Myself, Aaron Lamb, director and the facilitator of the meetings, and John Tassi, our webmaster. And of course, there's all of you, 900 members, with special thanks to 3 of those members who are joining us today to share their stories and answer some questions. And everyone is a volunteer. You can be too. Our support to you comes in the way of our website, as you probably well know by now, www.ipcsg.org, the Informed Prostate Cancer Support Group. We have newsletters that we email out, our monthly video streaming on the third Saturdays, and the hotlines with phone numbers that you can see there. The first one there is for Jean. I believe that number is on our website. That's a great phone number to call, especially if you are recently diagnosed and trying to figure out what way to go and how to make a decision on what treatment you want to pursue. Bill Lewis's number there as well. Both gentlemen will be happy to take your calls and get you connected with whoever might be able to best help you. And additionally, a recent addition is Sharon. Her number's shown there as well. And she would love it for women, family, and caregivers to reach out to her to help answer questions as well. And our website, of course, has a huge amount of information on it, not just links to the videos, announcements of the upcoming meetings, but just a ton of wonderful information. And thank you so much to everybody who's put in so much work on getting that website to be as good as it is. We do need volunteers. We would like people to help recruit and schedule our speakers, as well as, such as with today, to share your experience in front of the group, as well as on individual one-on-one calls with new members in the way of those hotline calls. So please, if you're willing to volunteer, please contact us either through the website or the hotline number there. Now, our support group purpose is that we share patient-focused experience on becoming your own case manager through informing, networking, and caring. We are a group of experienced participants, but we are not medical professionals. and any sharing by any one of our group may not be a substitute for your medical counsel. And we do need your support. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, so our donations are tax deductible. There's no medical or religious affiliation. During the coronavirus pandemic, while we're video streaming our meetings, our costs remain very much the same. We need to pay for the Zoom meeting license itself, pay for the website to stay up. We have a variety of ways that we're advertising, including new ways that we're going to be reaching more and more people to try to get the word out on our organization. So please do take a moment to make a donation. You can do that via PayPal on our website, or you can send a check payable to the Ipcsg at the address that you see there. That address, of course, is also on the website. And thank you so much for all of your generous donations. We've certainly received a lot of checks during the pandemic, so thank you very much. Our upcoming meeting, you might have thought that we were going to have Dr. Lamb, I think, originally back in February. He had to reschedule, so he will be next month on Saturday the 16th, giving his annual update on prostate cancer. But for today, we have our member roundtable, where members will be sharing their treatment and experiences. Today, we're going to have Mike Rogers, who is a 17-year survivor. He'll start out, followed by Keith Jameson, who is a more recent PCA survivor with 4 years under his belt, and finally with Bob Cruikshank, who's been battling his prostate cancer successfully for 18 years. So with that, Mike, why don't you start us off? And you are
welcome, everybody. Do I see the screen? Do I see myself, or what do I see when I'm talking, Aaron?
Well, I'm guessing that everybody can see the presentation.
The screen. They don't need to see. They don't need to see me. That's fine with me.
Okay.
Okay. He throws this chart up, but let me start before the chart with how it all got started, as all of you have been through or are going through. To preface, I was a high school friend of past President Lyle LaRoche, and in 2000, 2001, 2, somewhere in there, I had an elevated PSA, and he invited me to one of these meetings. There were about 20 people. They met in Grantville in a library, and I think that's where I met Gene. And they all laughed at me and said, "You have BPH, don't worry about it." And I thought, that's pretty reassuring. My doctor at the time was the urologist that I was going to was very convinced that he was one of the best in the world and that I was in great hands. And so we did a biopsy. Everything seemed fine. I went along for 2 or 3 years. My PSA kept rising. The first biopsy I did was by that spring-loaded machine that was one of the most barbaric instruments in all of medical science. Then he put me on Proscar and said, "Oh, you'll be on this for a long time, Mike." And I was on it for about 3 years. In 2005, he took me off, and my PSA went from an elevated 4 or 5. It had gone from 2 or 3 to 4 or 5 to 15, almost in a matter of 6 months. So the Proscar had hidden the fact that my cancer was growing. So my genius urologist had put me behind the 8 ball, and I had to make a decision. Now, in 2005, there was no one doing robotic surgery on the West Coast. There was somebody in Irvine that I heard about, but the best person I ever heard of was on the East Coast, and he had done 500 of them, and that seemed to be trained in France under the tutelage of the people that developed the process. And radiation at the time seemed to be like, oh no, everybody kept saying, don't do that, don't do that. a lot of hindsight and a little bit of regret, but going with what I knew at the time and the advice I was getting from particularly urologists, that the robotic surgery was the answer. By the time I got the appointment, got to the East Coast and got into surgery, my PSA had gone from 15 to 25. The surgery was supposed to be a routine 2 or 3 hours. At the end of 6 hours, he told me it was the limit of his endurance and the limit of his ability, but he got it all. And in a post-surgery interview, I asked him, did you take some of the lymph nodes? And he said, no, they were nice and pink and rosy. I don't think I needed to do that. And as many of you know, that was a giant mistake. After 2005, my PSA stayed relatively calm. By the way, my Gleason was 3+4, and it stayed reasonably good. And then it started taking off again. Well, oh boy, it's back. And I then met Dr. Lamb, and we started on the long journey together, meeting with Richard since probably 2000, I don't know, 7 or 8. And as my PSA started up, they said, well, how am I going to, I said, can I do radiation? Yes, you can, but we don't know where your tumors are. So I found a way to find a Dr. Dusing in Kansas City, who was one of the first ones to deal with the C11 acetate imaging, and went to him. He did the process. I did the PET scan, brought it back to Dr. Munt, and he said, where did you get this? And I told him, and he said, well, if we can see it, we can get it. So away we went. And as you can see from this graph, I did radiation and Casodex. Everything went down, and then it came back. And by then I moved to Phoenix and started doing the C11 there, and it went up, did the C11, got the imaging, took it to Dr. Munt. He did the spot radiation, dropped, and I did Casodex on a intermittent basis. I didn't do it on a continuum, which turned out to be a very good decision. And so the graph kind of shows you the discovery of the problem, the treatment of the problem, reoccurring of the problem, the same discovery, the treatment, back again, down again. I don't know where it ends, 19. And then for some reason, we decided to keep me on Casodex on a permanent basis. I really was a real fan of the intermittent, but long story short, because I don't want to make a long presentation, I am now, the Casodex finally quit working, and I am now on Xtandi, and I am, my PSA has gone since I started Xtandi from about 12 or 13 to 7 to 3. And I'm tolerating Xtandi very well. Dr. Lamb said, are there the side effects, Mike? No, don't worry about the side effects, but I have to tell you there's seizure and stroke. And I said, well, no, I haven't had either one of those. And my last call with him, he said, how are you doing with the side effects? Well, great. I've got them all. You have a runny nose? Yes. You putting on weight? Thank you. We got that too. Breast development? Beautiful. Got that. How about sleeping a little longer? Well, that's not so bad, but yeah, I have that one too. So this 17-year journey has been almost a complete copy of this chart. And the reason I put it up, it's been up, it's been down. There have been good times and there have been bad times. Hindsight, I think all of us in this prostate process, in hindsight, would do things just a little bit differently. but we don't have that choice. We have to do where we are and go forward. So my choices, like many of you, become more limited and more limited. The one thing I have avoided through this whole process is Lupron. I have never had a Lupron injection. I've avoided it on purpose. Hopefully I can do that for a long time. At some point, I probably will have to endure it, but Lupron's a tough one. And I wasn't willing to have that side effect too. Things I seem to get all of the side effects. And at the present time, with a 3 PSA and taking the Xtandi, I'm doing fine. One of the things about Xtandi, by the way, is I opted when I turned 65 on Medicare to take the best supplement I could buy because I knew I had prostate cancer. It turned out to be one of the better decisions of my life. And I would admonish any of you that have that decision, pay for the best you can get, because it allowed me to go to New York and have surgery, to Kansas City to have diagnostics, to go to Phoenix to have diagnostics. And almost all of those things were paid for, except for the Phoenix C11s. Everything was paid for because I had the best supplement plan. And it also allows me to go to any doctor I want to at any time. I don't know if it's a part of my prostate cancer treatment or not, but about 18 months ago, I had back surgery. And of course, with my good luck, the 2-hour surgery turned out to be 6. And I'm still working on, with 8 screws and a couple rods, I'm still doing physical therapy all the time. Gene Van Fleet and I were talking. He said, what maybe overall, Mike, would you say was one of the best things you could share? And I said, probably, Gene, someone told me, and I don't know who I could give credit for, once you get into this PSA rising and prostate process, you have to exercise. I got a personal trainer and I went to the gym religiously. I went because I had someone there waiting for me. So twice a week, I had a trainer waiting for me who was very good at what he did. He didn't try to get me to lift weights to set a record, but to stay healthy. And I think that exercise probably is one of the great medicines that we have found in the survival rate of prostate cancer. The Xtandi this year, if you can believe it, is $14,000 a month. $14,000 a month. Now, I'm sure no one pays that, but if you don't pay for the Xtandi, they have programs depending on your income. And in my situation, I paid $3,000 the first month and now $700 a month. That's expensive, but if it's $700 a month to keep me at a low PSA, then that's what it is. So I'm open to questions at the end. I don't want to drag this out, but it's been a 17-year journey. I'm planning on a lot more. I've lost a lot of friends along the way. And of all the doctors and all the things that I've done, the Informed Prostate Support Group has probably been the best thing I've done, the best single thing I've done, because it gave me some validation for some of the things I did. And it also taught me what questions to ask when I got to my doctors. It gave me the name of doctors. And it also gave me a little regret for some of the things I didn't do. But again, exercise, a little nutrition, and a lot of good luck and a little faith. I have really, in my journey, tried not to overthink prostate cancer. I, as you can see from the chart, it's pretty much how my mind goes. When my PSA is down, I just forget I have prostate cancer, if that's possible. I try not to over-diagnose myself, not to worry about my PSA rising a point or two. And it maybe a little procrastination in this area is a healthy thing. I think your mental health along the way is important. I happen to be married to a wonderful woman who is very understanding of the side effects that are unpleasant. And we've shared a very happy marriage. It hasn't affected our marriage at all. Maybe in some ways it's improved it. So I'm open for questions at the end. Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks a lot, Mike. One thing I want to ask before you go on to mute. Actually, for those of us out there that don't know about Xtandi, can you please explain what type of medication that is?
Well, it's really a sophisticated Casodex. It does the same thing. It surrounds the tumor, and in my case, my tumor came back in the prostate bed, so it would not allow me to have radiation again. And so, okay, now what? And it surrounds the tumor and does not allow the testosterone to enter the tumor, but it does not lower the testosterone.
Interesting. So that's not considered a hormone therapy. Is it actually considered a chemotherapy?
Yeah, probably more so. I think it is. The other name for it's erletamide or Xtandi.
All right, and I think Xtandi was oh yes, somebody has, I think, included that in the chat, enzalutamide, and spelled it.
Yeah.
And Xtandi, I think, was Exandi, or maybe just
Xtandi.
Xtandi. Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, I was curious when your PSA was 4 back in 2013. Where did you did say you had a C11 imaging at that time, right?
Yes.
Where did they find the cancer? Was it entirely still within the prostate bed area?
Always in my lymph system, and it followed my lymph system. And if they'd done the radiation at the time they were chasing it, they have since, I think, figured out that instead of radiating the lymph gland that they see, if they get 2 or 3 ahead, 1 or 2 or 3 ahead, that maybe they can stop the progression because it became linear on my lymph system. I would have it in spot A and it will move to B, which was the next lymph gland. So it was obviously following my lymph system. And had that lymph gland been removed at surgery, I might be cancer-free, and maybe not. That's one of those unknowns.
Gotcha. All right. Well, yeah, thanks so much for sharing your story today. Yeah, we'll take more questions at the end for Mike. But next up, we've got Keith.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Mike. You know, one of the great things about this group is that as you listen to other people talk about their experiences, that you get more information. Information is power. I think it's useful, and I learned just from listening to Mike's presentation about just learn from his experience, and I think that's a valuable thing that we can, this support group provides, is learning from each other's experiences. So I appreciate you having us on today for that. So real quickly, my background is I'm 58 currently. I live in North San Diego County. I come from a big family. I have 6 siblings, 4 brothers, 2 sisters. I'm number 6 out of the 7. I'll get back to the family part in a bit, because family history is part of was part of my journey, part of my decision-making process when I was going through trying to understand how I was going to treat the cancer that I have. I was first diagnosed at age 54. I'm married for 31 years to a wonderful woman too. And we have 5 children. So I want to go back to the family history part. My father was diagnosed at age 52 with prostate cancer. He only noticed it because he had started getting blood in his urine, and went to a urologist. This was back in the 80s, and you know, the surgery wasn't really. It was a brutal option for him at that time, and he was not interested in it. So he chose to do hormone therapy, and that worked for him for about 6 years. And the concern that the doctors had at the time after 6 years were blood clots due to some of the side effects from the hormone therapy. So they changed his treatment, which changed his cancer. It grew and spread rapidly after that, after they changed his treatment. And after 2 years of fighting, he passed away at the age of 60. So one of the couple of things that came to me out of that experience was one that I remember my dad saying this about his experience. He said, "I know why they call it practicing medicine now, because they're practicing on me." And so that stayed with me over through the years. And so when I was diagnosed, I realized that, the doctors aren't infallible. They're well-meaning, intentional. Some, they're the experts in their field, and I appreciate all that they do, but you really have to take ownership over your own care. That was driven home a little bit further. I'll get to with my family history. I was always told, at 40 you should get a go see get a checkup. So at 40, I went into the doctor. At the time, we were living in Florida. I had an HMO doctor, and he said, "What are you here for?" I said, "Well, my family history, and I'm here for a prostate checkup." And he said, after a very cursory exam, he dismissed me real quickly and said, "You don't have any cancer. Just come back when you're 50." So I'm not a big fan of going to the doctors anyway. So when I turned 50, I thought about it, but I procrastinated. And, like I said, I'm not a big fan. I felt like I was in good health, and didn't need to go looking for trouble. So I ignored it. And then at 54, my father-in-law had started having health troubles. And the doctor that he was seeing at the time gave him some bad advice, gave him misdiagnosed his condition. And he ended up having pancreatic cancer, but he didn't find that out until he switched doctors and went to Scripps, and Scripps diagnosed him within 24 hours of having pancreatic cancer. He passed away three weeks later from that. And I thought, well, I can't keep procrastinating my I need to go see a doctor. So I went to Scripps. I'm not here to advertise for Scripps. That was my experience, but I found that they really excellent at what they do. Went to a primary doctor visit, full workup with PSA screen. And I came back with an elevated PSA of 4.7, which triggered a biopsy. And, I wasn't overly concerned. I just, was going through the process. The biopsy came back that with 3 of the 12 cores that were tested positive for cancer, with a Gleason score of 6, 6, and 7 for those 3 cores that tested positive. And that was all new foreign language to me at the time. I mean, I just didn't know just learning what a Gleason score was, what a PSA test was. But I knew, I remembered when reading the email from the doctor, it was like, oh. I sat in the car, and it took me a while to get my head wrapped around it. And it, eventually I came to my senses, and I first thing I did was reach out on the internet and came up with that there was a local support group right here in San Diego that is specializes in prostate cancer. So I reached out and spoke to Gene. He was excellent. And gave me information, which is what I needed.
Yeah, the group has certainly been very helpful to a lot of people. I mean, I joined the group, I think, just about 6 months before your February 2018, and it was certainly reassuring and just amazing the way the people helped, especially Gene and George.
Yeah, he was fantastic. I was anxious. I had a lot of anxiety over it, obviously, and he calmed me down and gave me information, which empowered me. Mm-hmm. So from there, I came to the meetings. I learned from the presentations. They were fantastic. I read as much, I read different books. There's a lot of information. There's a flood of information. But what it came down to is, I had to look down at my particular situation. Everybody's different. And what would work best for me. So a couple of books that I read that I thought were really helpful for me was called The Key to Prostate Cancer by Dr. Mark Schultz. And what was useful about that is there's a grading system in there for determining the extent of your disease, how bad, what stage of cancer you were. And in my case, because I had that Gleason score of 7, a 4+3, there's some indication that type of cancer, if we just left it alone, just did active surveillance, but it was likely to metastasize. And, so leaving it alone was probably not the best option for me until I also started looking into, what that meant. Okay, so if I'm going to do something, what of all the treatments, which ones are best for me in my situation? So the doctors at Scripps, they recommended the surgery, the robotic surgery. So I, not too excited about doing that, but I had to face, what my real choices were. So I did some more research on that, read more books. Another great book I thought that helped me a lot was A Guide to Surviving Prostate Cancer by Dr. Patrick Walsh, who, it's my understanding he pioneered the nerve-sparing surgery with Johns Hopkins. And he had a quote at the beginning that I thought was useful for me, helped me. He said, "What is a prostate? It's like the appendix. The prostate is expendable, and men can live quite comfortably without it." He has many more things in that book, but for me, that helped. That helped me in my process. So after doing some more research and soul searching, I decided that surgery would be the best option for me, but I wanted a second opinion. So I went out to the Mayo Clinic and met with a doctor. I did some research on the internet, met with the Dr. Getman, who was head of their surgery, their urology, that particular part of their urology department. And I remember what came at a conversation was I was asking for other ways to treat this other than surgery. Is there, could you do ablation therapy where you can freeze it, or can you do, can you spot treat it? And he told me, he said, yeah, we could do that. But the problem that you have is that you've got a family history of this disease, and we can treat that small portion of it, but then it's probably going to come back, and you're probably going to have to deal with it again later on sometime. But after you do something else, surgery won't be an option for you if you do something else before you have the surgery. So, I decided to have the surgery. I went to Mayo to have it. They had a great team there. Was in for one day, had the surgery, walked out the next day, and exercise, walking, and drinking a lot of water helped me get back on my feet quickly. Another thing that I did that they had available at the time that I think might be helpful to understand, they had a clinical trial where they were doing platelet therapy, where they were after the surgery during the surgery they would sprinkle some of your own platelets from your own blood in the wound area. I don't know if anybody else that's had surgery has ever done that, but I found that I had a quick recovery. I had never had any problems with incontinence, or was able to, as soon as they took the catheter out, be able to manage my urinary control. And so another part of my recovery process, the sex is different, but it's still enjoyable. Used Viagra for the first few months as recommended, but after that, I've had no need for it. My post-op PSA results are, immediate, like 4 months after the surgery was 0.01. About a year and a half after, it was like 0.07, and just recently, last week, I had another PSA test, and it was 0.1. So still monitoring it, monitor it for the rest of my life. Just a little family history prologue. I have, as I mentioned earlier, I have 4 brothers. My oldest brother was diagnosed in 2016 at the age of 63, and he's at a Gleason score of 6 on the 2 cores that he showed positive for cancer, and he just chose to do active surveillance. And his latest PSA was 4.0, but he's still monitoring it. I have 2 other brothers that the PSA screens have been well below 3.5, so they're we probably thought that they were adopted anyway. So that's I'm just kidding. My youngest brother, Mike, he got it diagnosed at age 49, and at age 50, decided to have the surgery. Went to Johns Hopkins for that. I went out there to just be with him while he went through that, and he's tested every 3 months after his surgery, and it's been negligible. His PSA count's been negligible. So that's my story. That's my journey up to this point. Like I said, it looks like we'll be monitoring this for the rest of my life, but available for any questions if anybody has any.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing your story. Yeah, it's certainly important to, a lot of times, family didn't talk about, especially this type of surgery, this type of cancer years ago. One of the stories that I share is that, happened to know some good friends, neighbors, where the father was diagnosed with prostate cancer in probably his mid 50s or late 50s, I think it was, and decided, no, we don't do anything about that. In our family, we don't talk about it. We don't treat it. He never pursued it, and he died within a couple of years, I believe. Yet his wife went on to live another 30. So, it really has an effect on other people when we choose to not consider treatment. And, it's especially important when we have family histories, because, if we don't happen to catch it early ourselves, we at least want our loved ones to not go through what we went through. It's appearing more and more in my family that that there's definitely a family history. It seems to be on both sides of the family, and I've now had a cousin be surprised by a PSA that he hadn't been checking for a few years, and so now he's looking into treatment as well.
Well, Aaron, I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you for bringing that out. I just have one last comment about that I wanted to bring out, is that I think it really is important to share the information that you have, your journey, share your journey with, especially your family. Mm-hmm. So my experience with my father was one of the most profound and spiritual experiences in my life.
Yeah.
And I was grateful for him allowing me to walk with him as he went through that. I think, we think it might be a burden on others. We don't want to be a burden on others, but it's not. It's allowing others to share our life and our journey with us.
Yeah. I was on a panel one time for it had a bunch of cancer survivors talking to some people, and it was in honor of one of my coworkers who had died very quickly within a month of finding out that I think he had a brain tumor, quickly growing brain tumor. And you could just feel in the audience as like anxieties were getting, were rising as people were asking more and more questions. And I said, the one thing you should consider about all of us sitting up here is we're actually lucky. Sure, we have cancer, still fighting cancer, maybe, are in remission, but, considering compared to somebody that ends up with a stroke or a heart attack in a car accident that dies immediately, those people didn't get to say goodbye. They didn't get to have this profound life experience that we get to share with our loved ones, whether it's for another 6 months, or whether it's for another 20 or 30 years. So it's it is definitely life-changing, and in many ways, as with myself, it is a change for the better. We certainly think about, how am I going to live my life better today? Because it's, you start to realize, your mortality. One other thing I was going to ask you, you did say that you did a lot of reading, the Guide to Surviving Prostate Cancer, reading some books, getting information from the Prostate Cancer Support Group. For me, when I was diagnosed, one of the key things that I did was I continued going to work, despite my boss saying to me, hey, there's obviously something going on with you. Do you need to take some time off? And, I needed work to get my mind off of everything until I could, get past the 2-month wait time for my biopsy. What else did you do in your life, or what else did your caregivers do to help you through that time between, like figuring out what to do and actually getting treatment?
Yeah, that's a great question. And thanks for asking it. I tend to work too much. And for me, it was, taking more time to exercise. And that's what I appreciate about what Mike said earlier about exercise and diet, how important that is. Because I still struggle with that. I still, at the end of an exhausting day, I still struggle with balancing my life out, between work and time off, and exercise, taking care of yourself physically. But I agree with him. I think, and that's what I did. I got myself into shape. I knew I was going to go in for the surgery. I exercised a lot more. I felt a lot better. Started, really paying attention to what my diet was all about. And I find that, here I am 4 years post-surgery, and I have to go back to that. I have to fight that fight and keep exercising. But I think, and eating right. I think those are the things that finding a good balance in life, I think, is key to your overall health, and certainly when you're fighting something like prostate cancer.
Yeah, those are some great things to concentrate on. Yeah, certainly, the unknown is difficult to deal with, but at least having some type of plan to follow is, whether it's a decision on the treatment or even just, exercising more and improving your nutrition are definitely great plans to pursue. I'm going to take one quick question from Bill Lewis before we go on to our next speaker. Bill, you want to ask your question?
Sure. Keith, I don't know if you're aware, but our speakers through the years have been saying if you have a prostatectomy and your PSA does not remain at 0, that's a big alarm bell. And so the fact that yours has crept up to 0.1 is significant. And as soon as it gets high enough for a PSMA scan, I'd strongly encourage you to get that and find out where it is, and keep working with your doctors to decide whether you need hormone therapy or whether you have something oligometastatic that can be zapped with radiation, which the folks at UCSD and the Proton Center are very good at. But keep an eye on that, buddy. We want to keep you around.
Bill, I appreciate that very much, because, my doctor had just kind of dismissed it and said, well, just keep monitoring it. I'm going to get a second opinion after hearing what you said, but thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, and I'd also recommend keeping track of your testosterone level as well. For me, after my surgery, my testosterone and PSA both rose similar to each other. Of course, for me, it only took about 5 months to go from, I guess I was at 0.05 and I got up to either 0.12 or 0.17, something like that, before I decided to move on to new treatment. But the PSA still can fluctuate, based upon activity and nutrition and so forth, and certainly is, I feel, related to the testosterone level as well. But yeah, I believe that PSMA scan, sometimes it seems like doctors still don't want to give that unless the PSA is up to, I think, 0.2. But even for me on an MRI at UCSD, they were able to detect the lymph nodes that were invaded, even with that PSA at only 0.12 or 0.17. Bill, did you have something more you wanted to say?
I just wanted to say, my understanding is that they really like to see it at 0.4 or 0.5 before they do a PSMA to get a good chance of seeing where it is. So,
Yeah.
Talk to your doctor and see what he thinks. We also, our last speaker last month said there's new versions of the PSMA coming along that he said are more sensitive and can detect things at a lower level. So if there's a clinical trial somewhere of whatever those agents are, which he didn't specify, but you could email him on the address that we put in the newsletter, then you can find out where to go to get right on top of this.
Very, very helpful, and I really appreciate your thoughts on it, Bill, and Aaron too. You too.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thank you for sharing your story. We'll go back to more questions at the end, but why don't we now turn to Bob? Why don't you unmute yourself and take it away?
Okay. Did I get unmuted?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, good. I really appreciate this is what we used to call a roundtable discussion, and I learned more from discussions within the group than I probably did from all the doctors presenting, because we're all going through the same thing. I was just going to start with the history of my prostate cancer. It started in 2004. I was age 55, and my primary care physician was the one who did a digital rectal exam during an annual wellness exam, and he felt irregularities or lesions of the prostate and referred me to a urologist for further evaluation, even though my PSA has always been low, and at that time it was 2.2, which of course did not set off any alarms, except that from the DRE. The urologist then, and I hadn't been to a group and I didn't know anything. So I was just following the HMO path of just going to the least expensive doctors that they could find. And, he did a random biopsy of the prostate, 6 cores from one side, 6 cores from the other, without identifying their locations, dropped them in 2 separate vats and, left and right, and came back lots of cancer, 80%. And each of the cores, I think, what was it? 10 out of the 12 were cancerous. It was then it was 3 plus 4, a 7, if anybody cares about all the numbers. But then I was referred to a surgeon at UCSD, and that's when I talked to a friend who's a pathologist, and he said he sounded like I was on the path for surgery. I was only seeing surgeons. I went from one urologist who was a surgeon to another urologist as a surgeon who was a very skilled surgeon, is what everybody said. But then my friend referred me to this group, and the Informed Prostate Cancer Support Group. And then my very first meeting, I met one of the guys who was a very good researcher, and he had a whole list of names of phone numbers, addresses of prostate cancer specialists, and they're all in LA. There's nobody here in San Diego that at that time. And so I went up to and also he was saying you need to get a proper targeted biopsy. And that's kind of one of the key things that I believe determined, the rest of my treatments path, of what I was on, was the imaging that was done by Dr. Duke Bond, who I don't think is in practice anymore, but he was radiation or radiologist who used an old color Doppler ultrasound, but with great skill. And he's up in Ventura. I've heard he's either retired or semi-retired. And then he did a proper biopsy and then found that the cancer was in the seminal vesicle and outside of the prostate capsule. And I took that information or that pathology report then back to the surgeon at UCSD, and she had been prepared previously to do an MRI or do surgery because they had done an MRI which indicated cancer. Didn't really say where exactly it was. It was very iffy, that was in the earlier days of using MRIs. Hopefully it's a lot better. But at that point, she said that the surgery would be ridiculous, and then referred me to a medical oncologist. And I had already set all that up because, through the group, I was able to get all the names and of everybody. So I saw Dr. Lamb after that. That was back in 2005. And let's see, where am I? That at that point, he recommended androgen deprivation therapy, or ADT, which is the hormone treatment, and was going to have me on that for 28 to 36 months, along with radiation. Problem was, at that time, he didn't feel there was anybody in San Diego, who had the expertise to do the radiation that I needed. And so I postponed that and thought that maybe the ADT, the hormone treatment, would be curative. And so after 28 months, I went off of the ADT and then just followed it with PSAs and the color Doppler ultrasounds. And in a year, it came back with a vengeance. And then I went from the 7 Gleason score to 8. And they said it was very angry. And at that point, I went back on ADT and then scheduled radiation therapy with Dr. Munt at UCSD, who was qualified. Dr. Lamb loved him. So I went ahead and had the radiation, and then it followed the the cancer with active surveillance since 2008 until 2020, when my PSA started rising. And so I now this year I had a MRI of the prostate that then showed that it looked like there was cancer again. And now last Wednesday I had a biopsy, and I'm waiting for the results on that. So at this point, I'm waiting for the biopsy results, and I'm assuming it's cancerous. It looks like it is from my experience, and so I'll be fighting the recurrent prostate cancer and then trying to figure out what to do. and get back into that research mode that I was in, back in the early days of trying to figure out what to do.
Yeah.
And
I was going to ask, sorry to interrupt you there. Do you happen to recall what your current PSA is?
Oh yeah. Let's see. It was running for years at 0.2 to 0.3. And then when it started rising, it went up to, I think, and I had several PSAs in a year and a half period, and it rose up to 0.75, I think is where it is now.
Oh, okay. Okay. It's still at 0.75. I might have miscopied your notes because I indicated 0.75 back in 2020, but wasn't sure if it had risen more since then.
Yeah, and 20, I just put that because I didn't look up all the numbers. I looked up the older things because I had this, just a second. Back in the old days, we had these big binders, and with all the different everything in it, to keep track of everything. And I really haven't done that yet. I haven't gotten back into the binder mode and filing everything away. But I know that it went up to 0.5 and then to 7, in a period of about 18 months. So it alarmed me, and so I figure there's something going on.
Sure. And
it looks like there is. So hopefully, I'm hoping that it comes back cancerous in the prostate, which is a funny thing, but that's a whole lot better than having it microscopically throughout the body. Certainly. And that would be treated locally, because from the start I had advanced localized with only suspected microscopic cancer, and because they didn't have the test that back in 15 years ago to be even test that. Hopefully that PSMA would show a whole lot more than body scans or CT scans or MRIs have shown, which I assume the colony has to be pretty large to be able to see anything.
Yeah. So. Additionally, do you remember what your PSA was after you finished? What did the PSA bounce back to after your first course of ADT, the 28 months?
0.1.
Oh, okay. So that was still pretty low, but that was, even with that, you wanted to do a biopsy, and that's how you ended up with the 4+4?
Oh, okay. No, okay. For after during the 28 months of the hormone therapy, it dropped pretty quickly and just bottomed out somewhere around 0.1. And then during the after I went off the ADT in 2007, I didn't find the notes on that when I was trying to put this together, but I don't believe it was rising very much, and the PSA was never a good indicator for me, and they did a lot of other tests and blood work all along, because my PSA was always low. In fact, after I did the vegan diet and lots of exercise right after I was diagnosed, when I was tested in January of 2005, it was down to 1.43.
Yeah.
And so diet and exercise will help your PSA levels.
Certainly
that
will.
was pretty well proven. But there again, that everybody at that time, you didn't have a problem unless you're over 4.0.
Right.
And
yeah. And were your testosterone levels always normal except when you were on ADT?
they were normal low. It was in the low range. right from the start of the testing. It was not high, at any time. So.
Yeah, for comparison to your 2005, I also had a Gleason 3+4 and then a T3C. It ended up being outside the prostate for me, and my PSA at that time was 15. So yeah, you did have a low PSA, yet serious disease.
There was something that, and this was kind of an unusual, having the low PSA, and I was told at the time of what they thought that meant, but it was an aggressive cancer that did not produce, the specific or prostate specific antigen.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a little hard to follow things, and nobody saw bells and whistles when they saw my low PSAs, or
Right.
I had to get to the right people,
Right.
and I did, and if I'd had the surgery, they said I would have had catastrophic problems.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why radiation was chosen by several doctors right from the start, and after I got past the surgeons. And that's kind of, you need to go interview different doctors. I saw a lot of different doctors, and I saw several radiation oncologists here in San Diego, and didn't choose any of them until Dr. Munt came along, and I've visited him again this year, and he said radiation for the recurrent prostate cancer was a bad idea, and he was leaning toward cryotherapy or something else. And so at this point I'm looking, trying to figure out what to do, because I'm actively involved again, and not just sitting back and having a PSA and a DRE once a year like I did for 10 or so years.
Mm-hmm.
So, because I was on, I was cured as far as I was concerned.
Yeah.
But it did come back.
With the recurrence, have you had any genetic testing? I would have to imagine that there's something either about the, with the low PSA, that there's something that'll show up in the genetic to kind of put you in one particular category, it seems.
I haven't done that yet, and I will talk to the doctors about it here. And as I said, I'll probably, now that things are getting serious again, get back to a prostate cancer specialist, specifically Dr. Lamb.
Mm-hmm.
I trust him. Over the years, I saw him at the annual meetings. It's where he spoke, and he always was great on coming up with all the new things that were coming out, all the chemotherapies that were not available back in 2005 or even 2008. There was Taxotere, I think, was about it.
Mm-hmm.
And all the new treatments are encouraging that there are more weapons out there to take care of our cancers.
Yeah, there certainly are. Yeah, I'm definitely very encouraged by the PSMA-based both imaging and treatment. I think of that as the smart bomb technology that for killing those cancer cells. It'll be interesting to see how the doctors interpret your PSMA scan results, given the history of very low PSA as well. Whether that has a limiting effect on the PSMA imaging as well.
Yeah, and as I said, they said that there was something, and I can't remember what it was said, that indicated because of the aggressive cancer that did not produce PSA. Mm-hmm. And I'll have to get back with Dr. Lamb. I'm sure he knows.
Yeah, yeah, certainly. All right, so with that, yeah, thank you, Bob, for sharing so much information and your story. I'm going to stop sharing so that hopefully we'll now have bigger pictures of ourselves up there. And we'll take a bunch of questions from the audience. I think one of the first questions I saw come across on the chat was somebody was asking what the cost for the Medicare supplement was that I think it was Mike that had mentioned. Mike, do you want to take yourself off mute and Keith as well to answer questions? And what I'd say is anybody who would like to ask a question, why don't you try to use the function of raising your hand? Let's see, how do we do that actually? I don't even see it on mine, but Bob, or excuse me, Bill Lewis, do you want to chime in and tell people how it is that they can raise their hands? I'll then call on them to ask a question. If Bill is still there, Bill's on mute.
It's under reactions at the bottom.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Under reactions, there's a variety of things, including raising your hand, and click on that if you have a question. But otherwise, Mike, you want to comment on the cost of the Medicare supplement?
Yeah, mine had a section called More, and I clicked on that, and then I was able to raise my hand.
Okay, great.
So I am still here.
Okay.
Just digging in the yard while I listen.
Gotcha. All right. Mike, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. You got me
yeah.
off video.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Oh, yeah, I'll get your video started again. Okay, I see. There we go.
Are. Hello.
Hi.
Now, I'm not an expert on the cost, but I chose Plan F, which is apparently is not available anymore. And I've given that same information to friends. My brother-in-law, for example, who got prostate cancer, elected to do, his surgeon told him, this is a typical urologist story, he hadn't called him back on the results of his PSA. He called me and said, apparently it's fine. He didn't even call me back. I said, call and get the number. And so he said, oh, okay, I'll call. And he's a chiropractor. So he said, okay, I'm a doctor. He would, of course, he would be right on that. And the urologist's answer was, oh, let me see. Let me find that. Here it is, doctor. Yeah, here it is, Dr. Soap. Oh, well, I got good news and bad news. You have prostate cancer, but the good news is you got me. I'm going to operate and save your life. So he called me and I said, what do I do? I said, run, run away. Never see that guy again. And he ended up having radiation surgery. So when it came time for him to decide what will I do with my Medicare, it was an easy decision for him to take F, or the best possible, because he knew, like me and many of you, we're going to be seeing a variety of doctors over a period of time. And what all of us want is the ability to see the doctor we want to see when we want to see them. We don't want to be sent somewhere to see someone we don't know. We want to, if I want to go see Dr. Lamb, I want to be able to go see Dr. Lamb. If I want to see Dr. Munt, I want to see Dr. Munt. I don't want to see someone else. I've taken a lot of time to figure out who I want to see. And then to have the insurance company tell me, no, you can't do that, go get in line, affects all of us. But I happen to be able to afford it. And it's about 400 and something a month at this point, I think, Aaron. Mm-hmm. I got a thing the other day and said, at my age, I'm 83, I'll be 84. I think it goes to 480 a month, something. And then it plateaus about 490. And then I'm not supposed to live any longer because it said it doesn't go up anymore. So
well,
that's
we're all hoping that you live a bit longer.
Well, thank you, Aaron.
Yeah, we're sure that you will. Yeah, thanks. Bill's got his hand raised. Another question from Bill.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that although Plan F went away, there is supposed to be some kind of substitute. And both Jean Van Vliet and I have the names of 2 consultants that you can go to that can work you through that if anybody is still making those decisions.
Gotcha. Thanks for that. And
Hey, Aaron, John Tassi here. Hey, Bill, is that something we can put on our website for others?
Bill muted.
Doesn't bother me if we stick their names up. So sure, I'll forward you the info.
Thanks.
I think, yeah. And I think in connection with an ad program that we're just about to run, we'll want to provide info as well about where to get a PSA test if you're not currently insured. So we'll load people up with information.
Thank you.
Sure.
Let's go to Rick. Rick, you got a question for the group? Let's see, Rick, you might still be on.
Okay,
Go ahead.
I got it. Now I have, I'm not sure with my question on the chat where it went, but I'm going to be eligible for Medicare in 2 years, but I'm currently with Kaiser. Should I stay with Kaiser when I enroll in Medicare, even with the supplement? Would it help to be able to select specialists if I need to see them?
Any of you guys want to comment on that?
I have a strong opinion, so let me be first to say, again, run. That you want to stay away, about as far away from, in my opinion, as far away from Kaiser as you can get, because it's the opposite of what you need. They will provide you with low-cost medical insurance, and they will send you to doctors that they determine you need. And what I've learned from this group is you don't need the doctors they think you need. You don't need the doctors you think you need. You need to get the information yourself. And so you need insurance that goes along with that kind of thinking. It's more money, but if you can afford the more money, it's cheaper in the long run, because all you need is one big medical bill and those monthly payments go away quick.
Now, I just completed external beam radiation therapy with UCSD under Dr. Munt's supervision, but Kaiser referred me to John Moore's Cancer Center. And it seems to me from listening in on everybody that Dr. Munt and John Moore's radiation treatment is standard of care. Are you suggesting because I'm with Kaiser that it's not standard of care?
No, I'm suggesting you got lucky.
Oh,
I think I have heard things in just in the past year about how Kaiser has been referring people to UCSD. I would guess that that's not a general, across the board type of thing. Maybe it is. I don't know. I'm no expert on it, but certainly from my experience, like I was given the option at work of a less expensive plan where I would only be able to see scripts doctors, or I could go to pretty much any doctor that I wanted to. And I decided I'm keeping my network as wide open as I can. And I've been going to UCSD Moore's Cancer Center for my treatment the last 4 years.
yeah, I think I might run into some follow-up between Kaiser and UCSD. The Kaiser urologist may want to follow me before he permits me to be seen at UCSD to be followed up.
Yeah, it's certainly an important thing to consider.
But I'll just request follow-up with UCSD.
Yeah,
I'd like to chip in my 2 cents again. I would also run away from Kaiser. They tried to kill me 6 years ago, and I ran away and got good oncologists, and here I am 6 years later.
Who's this speaking?
That's Bill Lewis.
Okay,
Yeah, feel free to talk to me about it.
yeah.
all right, let's go to Alvin. Alvin Feliciano. Alvin, do you want to, let's see. You want to take yourself off mute and ask your question?
There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. Thank you. I'm a Kaiser patient myself. I was a sharp patient before I had my surgery in 2010 with Sharp. Then I left Sharp and went to Kaiser, and Kaiser has been treating me for the past 8 years. and they've been excellent as far as I can see. So I've had 2 additional bladder surgeries because my incontinence was very high, and my PSA started to go up in the past 2 years. So they have put me on, I'm on Lupro plus Zytiga. So I'm getting the kind of care that I hear positive reactions about from the group. So I have no problem with Kaiser, and they're doing very well for me. The cost is very good, excellent, affordable. I'm on Medicare plus the Kaiser plan, and so I have nothing but good things to say. The doctor is excellent. She takes very particular. She takes time with me to explain things, answer all my questions, and so, like I say, I don't know. I think it's doctors are, how lucky you are on getting the right doctor. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you for taking my question.
Yeah, thanks for the response there. Yeah, certainly. This forum, even this meeting itself, or contacting people on Ipcsg, it's a great way to get a sanity check on whatever treatment you're being suggested, whether it's at UCSD, Scripps, Sharp, Kaiser, anywhere. Yeah, certainly the treatment that you're on is the same thing I was given by a Harvard doctor that's at UCSD. So a great way to basically, say, yeah, okay, this is a good way to go. Bill Lewis, is your hand still up from before, or did you have another question? Not sure if he is.
He's muted.
Okay, yeah, for some reason it won't even let me ask him to unmute, but or maybe it did. I'm not sure. Anyways, let's go to Bob August. I see that, Bob, you have your hand up.
I do, thanks. Let me see if my camera's actually working.
Gotcha.
So yes, first off, I really appreciate the group. I'm new to the group, relatively new to San Diego. My journey with this started when I was still living back in New York. Had my surgery at Sloan Kettering almost exactly 10 years ago. I just passed my 10th anniversary. For the first 5 years, my PSA was undetectable, which by Sloan definition is less than 0.05. Then it started to creep up just a little bit. It was 06, then 07, kind of hung out there for a while, and then just I had a test. I was back in New York last fall, was still 0.07. Then in January, the standard physical crept up to 0.1, and then that test repeated. So I took note of what Bill was talking about, that there seemed to be a little jump there, as something going on, and that's actually where I am today. So my question really is along the lines of what Bill Lewis was commenting on a little bit earlier. When do you take real action? What Sloan told me is they don't really do anything until you get to a 0.2. The PSMA technology, of course, is new since I had my surgery. I'm really thrilled to see that kind of technology is maturing. But of course, getting a PSMA test at a point when it's even if something's going on, it's unlikely to generate a result, doesn't really help. But I'm a complete believer in my earlier experience, which I won't go through the details of. But getting out in front of things and doing things early seems like the kind of the obvious strategy. So what is the thinking in terms of when it makes sense to really press for the PSMA test? And very importantly, what's a good first place to go to when you're in that mode where you don't know exactly where you are, you don't know what the treatment is. Standard urologists probably don't necessarily have the expertise for these the kinds of things that we're discussing. Those are all the kind of questions on my mind as I'm for the first time really in 10 years being compelled to really think about this issue and try and do the things that'll keep keep this issue at bay as much as possible and stay out in front of it.
Bob, I see your hands up. Did you want to reply to what Bob was talking about? Oh, yeah, sorry. Bob Cruikshank, I see your hands up. Do you want to reply to what Bob August was saying?
Well, no, I was going way back. I had a hard time figuring out how to get to the hand. I kept finding a wave thing. So it was going back to the Medicare, original Medicare F, which is the plan that I'm on, or an F plus. And the newer version is the G plan. And that the only difference is that has a $230 deductible, but the monthly payments are lower. So that's something to look into. If you're on original Medicare with the Medigap or the supplement plan, and that would be Plan G, and that can be changed on your birth month or they're around that time.
Great. All right, let me go back to Bob August, though. I couldn't quite hear all the parts of your question. What was it again that you said your PSA currently was?
Last reported was 0.1, which was up from 0.07 back last October. So for me, that's a percentage-wise a significant jump, albeit still very low, and seems to be below the threshold level where people might recommend taking a PSMA test. But I want to get out in front of things and not find that I'm looking in the rearview mirror with regret that I should have done something sooner. But I don't want to be too soon that it just doesn't pay off and creates a false sense of security when it's not warranted.
Right. Bill Lewis, you had mentioned before about the PSMA scans. Doctors waiting until the PSA is closer to about 0.4 before running that with the recurrence. Do you want to comment on what Bob was asking?
Yeah, I do want to comment. There are two great talks that we've had in the group. One was last month talking about what to do when your PSA rises. And so look at in the newsletter for the summary and the link to the video on YouTube. And then back in 2019, we had this very charming fellow from Arizona, Frank Tambouri, who spoke on when to pull the ripcord. And so I'd highly recommend both of those talks. And the summaries are always in the following month's newsletter. And so that can give you a lot of information about how to choose. And then as far as doctors, the two best choices seem to be Dr. Lamb at Prostate Oncology Specialists in Marina Del Rey. And then I highly favor my own at Compassionate Oncology Medical Group in Century City, LA, that can do all of the unusual stuff, follow you appropriately, blah, blah, blah. So, and then back on the Medicare, we are going to put up, I've already got approval from one of the Medicare advisors who called me just now during the meeting, that we'll have that up on the website in a jiffy.
Great, wonderful.
Aaron, this is Mike.
Yes, Mike, go ahead.
It all kind of comes around in a circle. The answer to Bob's question, or an answer to Bob's question, is at this point, Bob, and I have friends in your same situation, you're right, you want to get ahead of it, but honestly, don't make yourself crazy over it. Relax, you're going to be fine. You got a lot of time. At this point, if your insurance will allow it, if you have the option and you're not in a plan that makes you go to like Kaiser, which I'm not anti-Kaiser, I'm just using it as an example, you don't need a urologist anymore. You need a prostate oncologist, somebody that only deals with prostate cancer, because your situation now is going to be uniquely yours from now on. Up to this point, your treatment is more generic. You've done what you're supposed to do, and you've done it well. You may live with a 1, 1, 2, 1, 3 for years, and maybe not. So you're right to get ahead of it. But I think if you're in the hands of a prostate oncologist, in one meeting, he can tell you with great ability what's next and what to do. I happen to go to Dr. Lamb because he seems to be the best that we have right now. And I just did a PSMA recently, and it used to cost $5,000. And about 2 months ago, Medicare picked it up, maybe 3 months ago. Medicare picked it up, and it showed specifically that my tumor had returned, but exactly in the middle of my prostate bed, and it measured the size of the tumor. So now I know exactly where it is and what I'm dealing with. And that'll be your question as you go forward. What am I dealing with? And at this point, and where is it? So I would recommend getting a prostate oncologist, not a urologist at this point. You have a different situation now.
Yeah, that I appreciate that. That seems to make a lot of sense. And I did participate in the talk last month with Dr. Metzger. I found that very interesting. And I asked a similar question, and his response was, gee, that's really low. So everybody, and I'm taking it pretty, I guess what I would call a kind of a relaxed way. Not going crazy with it, just trying to do the right thing. And so his response was let it go a little bit and look for clinical trials. And so I've been doing that. Haven't found one that seems like it's really applicable, at least not locally at UCSD. But I appreciate the the thoughts, and it sounds like Dr. Lamb or an entity that has a good oncology, prostate oncology program is really the place for me to focus.
Yeah. A couple comments I'll make on that, because people have been quoting here their PSAs being below 0.1. When I was at Sharp, and this was just 5 years ago, they were only running a PSA test that could detect down to 0.1. And I'm not saying 0.01, I'm saying 0.1. And they considered that undetectable, there's no cancer active. And when I went to UCSD, they checked down to 0.01 with an ultra-sensitive PSA exam. And what my oncologist said was, make sure that you are always getting this ultra PSA test now, and also getting it from the same lab, because if you start switching, going to different places and so forth, just realize that they might have a slightly different way of measuring it. And so, a 0.01 at one lab might be a 0.02 or 0.03 at another one. So just also, keep that in mind, that you want to see, or you don't want to see a trend going up, but like when you do see a trend going up, make sure it's also being tested by the same lab. And there was something else I was going to say about that, but I guess anyone else have any other comments on Bob's question that they would like to say? If not, then I'm going to go to Charles, who has their hand up. And Charles, your video was in fact turning on. So it's off at the moment. I'll let you know when it's on again. I did just send you the request to start. Yes, we can see your video now. Go ahead with your question.
I was wondering, first of all, I'm new to the group, so thank you for having me. We're listening to you, to the group, and there's a lot of history here. I found out I had prostate cancer about 4.5 months ago. I had a hip injury. It was my iliac crest on left side, and I was told to jump up and down by UCLA by my then they sent me over to have an x-ray to see maybe I broke something. I'm an avid runner and I do a lot of exercise, 76 years old. Until about 1.5 years ago, I was running 6-minute miles. I'm now at about 11 or 12, not so good anymore. And I'm running short. In any event, the question that I have has to do with BAT. Has anybody here had bipolar androgen therapy?
Sorry, did you say
Hey.
bipolar androgen therapy?
Yes. What that is it's coming out of Hopkins, and it's trying to treat it two ways. They give you a lot of testosterone, and then they cut it, and so it's had a lot of positive results. For many years, people said the answer to this is not less testosterone, it's more testosterone. And so there's a therapy. I was speaking to a consulting therapist that I have at Cedars-Sinai, and he's telling me that he ran this one time, and it was very successful, but he also alluded to that the enhancement, when they're giving you more of this therapy, testosterone, that part of the bipolar, that they're still doing androgen deprivation. That makes no sense to me as an engineer, right?
Yeah, interesting concept.
We want something and then suppress it. That's why
sorry,
my question.
Say that last part again.
As an engineer, right? I'm logic driven, and it seems ridiculous to me to give somebody antigen deprivation at the same time you're feeding them the antigen. And so my wife's going to try to get a hold of the people who ran the test at Hopkins, and I'll talk to them. If anybody has experience with this, I'm interested to know it.
Now, sorry,
I had a PSMA. Go ahead.
Sorry, did you just say that they would potentially give you the testosterone at the same time as the ADT, or they first give you the high testosterone, then they give you the ADT?
According to what I was told, it was at the same time. And Aaron, I was confused, as I can see you are by it, but I'll get a hold of the people who actually did the trial. I want to find out exactly. And I'm finding very often that when you talk to physicians, if you're a detail-oriented person, like my wife, Rachel S. is, nothing escapes.
Yeah.
And like that. I did have for some of the other folks, I think PSMA is essential. If you have no prostate, go and get that as soon as you can. And it's covered by a lot of insurances. The other thing that I'd bring forward, it's important to have the best insurance you can, as was said directly, and a PPO insurance is, in my opinion, an essential.
Thanks.
It's more important than buying a new car this year.
Yeah. Thanks. And certainly more expensive than a new car, despite everything. Hopefully we won't see that that inflation continuing into healthcare. That's been all along, though. But yeah, thanks for the question there. Anyone out there, have you heard of this bipolar androgen therapy, and can shed some light on that?
You know, I'm guessing here, but a drug like Casodex doesn't lower testosterone. It surrounds the tumor, and it keeps the testosterone from entering the tumor, so it can't feed on it. So if you surround the tumor with an antigen that keeps it from accepting testosterone, thus growing, and then you increase the testosterone, how effective is the shield that you're putting around it going to be for the increased testosterone? And perhaps, I haven't heard of this, perhaps it is very effective, and you can. I know Lyle LaRoche messed around with this on his own and increased his testosterone and got a pretty good result. He lived 20 some years and then slipped and fell and hit his head. So yeah, but clinically, no, I've never heard of it.
Yeah. When I've heard of a description of what ADT is doing, it's, you know, it's starving the cancer cells of what they need, and given that the cancer cells replicate so quickly, they don't typically have the reserves in place to survive a famine, essentially. And that's why even some of these concepts of intermittent fasting or just a very low calorie diet, they believe will help kill some cancer cells. You know, in this case, I almost want to say it's kind of like, well, if you try to wean somebody off heroin, or I guess I should say, if I was a cell that was that liked heroin, you know, is it going to be easier on me or harder on me to get off of the heroin if you first make sure that I'm really addicted to that heroin? So, you know, I could kind of hear where maybe ramping it up and then, you know, completely shutting it off could have some interesting effects. But, you know, there's also been this concept of the flare, where I've heard, and I don't know, I haven't heard about it too much recently. Maybe some of you have, where when you first get ADT, first there'll be a spike in your PSA, or a spike even in the size of the tumor before it then shrinks down. So go ahead, Bob, or Charles.
It's an interesting thing. If you take bicalutamide, which is an inhibitor, it'll stop the flare when you're first getting on Lupron. However, I didn't go on Lupron. I took a look at Relugalex, and its profile shows that there's no flare associated with it. The second thing is that it drops your PSA very, very fast. I was at 1,300 and 8. That's a PSA of 1,300. Wow. I have advanced metastatic. It's in my bones, no lymph nodes or anything like that, but it's almost in every bone of my body at this point. And I'm looking to see naturally what would bring it down as quick as it can. And it brings it down much faster than Lupron does. It's also a tablet that you take. So you take it every day at the same time, which means you're not getting a surge of something that's allowed to wane. And it has if anybody wants to look it up, it has a much better profile if you're on ADT. What I'm looking at now is the second therapy is, you know, another drug that will be, that will help me, something like Casodex, which I believe is bicalutamide. It's an old drug. I think it goes back to 95. But that, you know, it dropped my PSA to 800 in about 10 days, which is fantastic. I might look to go back on that rather than the new ones. Is darolutamide that just came out. And my wife knows a lot about that. Maybe she should be on this thing.
Yeah, certainly the caregivers are at times even the people that get us onto these support groups. I actually think that the first time I got the link to Ipcsg, it was from a friend of mine, even who was out of town. And I know that at least one person I see on here, it was his wife that got the suggestion for this group from the doctor. But Charles, let me ask you, do you mind if I ask who you're seeing right now? Who's your oncologist?
Yeah, I'm seeing two at this particular point, one at Cedars and one at UCLA. So, and they're both top-notch people. They're really very good people. I want to get in to see Lamb. And my wife asked a lot of questions, and that put them off. And so I'm going to have to find another way to this person. We were actually trying to see his partner or the guy who runs it. But it seemed to us that it was all about the money and not about the patient.
And are you here in San Diego?
No, I'm not. I'm in Santa Monica.
Okay.
Sounds almost the same. San Diego, Santa Monica. When I was in the Navy, I was down in San Diego.
Yeah, gotcha. Because here locally, I'm seeing Dr. McKay at UCSD, and she I think is doing a clinical trial with people with bone metastases. I know that she has concentrated a lot on bone metastases before, so that's a person that you might consider as well. She's very.
That's not a bad idea. I recently was looking at different regimens for the trials, and there's a double-blind which means that I don't get to know if I'm having any therapy.
Yeah.
And then there's a triple blind where I don't know if anybody's aware of the triple blind, but none of the pharmaceuticals want to be, in that. That's where they don't get to see the results, per patient as they're occurring, and they don't have control over the evaluation, which is, as you probably are aware, a very big deal.
Certainly. All right. Well, yeah, Bob, thanks for that. It's certainly interesting to hear about new things such as this bipolar androgen therapy. It'll be, I'm certain, a topic that'll come up in the future. And we wish you luck with that.
Thank you.
Bill Lewis, I see that your hand is up again. Did you want to comment on Charles or have a new question?
Yes, I do. The bipolar androgen therapy is easily found by looking on the internet. It was pioneered by one of the outfits back east, and it's also been studied in Europe, and it's been effective in some cases in reversing castrate resistant disease back to sensitive. But it doesn't work for everybody. My oncologist at Compassionate Oncology Medical Group is kind of an expert in it. And I would also mention that if you want bone metastases, I had over 100 before I went on a combination of pharmaceutical and supplement type drugs. So I'd be happy to talk to you, Charles. So I guess that's it, but I'm happy to talk to anybody. I just love to talk.
And it's Bill's phone number is listed there on the website for one of the hotline numbers, right, Bill?
Yep.
Yeah. So feel free to contact him. All right. Any other questions from everybody? I don't see anyone's hand up, but even if you didn't get your hand up, go ahead and unmute yourself, ask a question if you've got anything to ask or any comment that you'd like to make, any, to share any helpful information to either our 3 members that shared their stories today or for anybody else that we're asking questions out there. I think Keith is reconnecting to audio. That might be more of a, Keith, did you have something you wanted to ask? Oh, he's back on mute again. Okay. I think that was just a technical glitch.
Yeah, I had a comment.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Anybody who is old enough to have required minimum distributions, being able to donate money to whatever charities you want, the brokers make it very easy where you go online, they write a check, they send it to the organization. And that's just something, since I recently, this past year, had to have the required minimum distributions out of my IRAs, I became more generous. It's so easy, it's painless. You don't even have to write a check. The broker does it for you.
Excellent.
And sends it out.
Excellent. Yeah. Thanks for that advice. I actually did have one more question. Let me find it again. Because who was it that had mentioned the, right, Keith, you'd mentioned the, if you're still on, the platelet therapy that you had. Now, I had, a few years back, I had some knee pain. I went to see a specialist, and they said that one of the new technologies, especially a lot of professional athletes was having done, was they would have some blood extracted, they would spin it down to separate the blood cells from the platelets and the plasma, and then inject, I guess the platelets it was, back into, in this case, my knee, to try to improve healing with the torn meniscus that I had. I'm curious with the platelet therapy if that was something that, as part of being done at, I believe you said during the operation, essentially, or at the end of the operation. Did they actually extract that from your blood a couple months beforehand, or was it by using the blood that they were able to collect during the surgery? So, Keith, you can.
Sorry about that, Aaron. I had to join on the phone, and I was trying to avoid the double, the feedback.
Gotcha. Sorry, did you hear my question?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
So what they did for me was, prior to surgery, they took some blood from me. They have a way of separating the platelets from the blood. And during the surgery, after they had, during the surgery at some point, that's when they applied the platelets.
Okay.
For the purposes of helping to heal. That's my understanding. That's what they told me.
Yeah, when I learned about surgery for me, I had done some reading up, and 2 weeks before my surgery, I was thinking, oh, they need to take a pint. I could bank a pint of blood so that if I needed it during surgery, at least my own blood would be there available. And obviously, that's not possible. If you are going to have a surgery where you are going to do that, your body needs at least a couple of months in order to replace those red blood cells if you are going to bank blood ahead of time. During the surgery, I assume that this is fairly standard practice. It turns out they can collect your blood that does get, I guess, expelled during the surgery. Up until the point when they're actually going to, reach the actual cancer cells and stuff in order to avoid potentially collecting the cancer cells as well. And if you do need blood during your surgery, they can actually use that blood that they've collected while you've been open and inject it back in. But luckily for us with prostate cancer surgeries, even though it is pretty taxing, I know that for myself, the surgeon said I lost 2 units of blood on the table. They said it's very unlikely that we will actually need to have blood, an injection or infusion of blood while we're open during surgery. I was kind of curious, to make sure that was something that they could do using the blood from the surgery itself.
Yeah, they did. Just prior to the surgery, they took what they needed. He said it wasn't even that much that they needed to take, and he described it as like sprinkling it in the affected area to facilitate healing. And I think there's something to that, and I'm surprised that they don't do more of it. So.
Yeah, interesting. It'll be interesting if we hear about that more often now.
All I can tell you is I had a quick recovery. And I maybe attribute that.
Great.
I feel like it helped.
Yeah, good. And you had robotic, right?
Yeah, robotic, correct.
Great. Yeah, I've heard of fairly fast recovery from the robotic these days, which is good.
Yeah, the catheter was the worst part of the whole deal. And after a week of enduring that, just took it easy for about 3 or 4 weeks. Back to work after about 3 weeks, and walking, drinking lots of water helped a lot.
Great advice. Yeah, thanks. All right, one last call for questions or comments. Anyone else want to ask the group anything? And
Aaron?
Yes.
Mike.
Go ahead.
Kind of an interesting summation. About the time I got diagnosed, I have 2 close friends, and to show you how the one size doesn't fit all, and that how this group really has helped, but sometimes you just get plain lucky. I have 2 close friends. One got operated on with a local surgeon and had so much cancer that he said, "You have so much cancer, I'm not going to touch you," which saved his life. Closed him up. He had salvage radiation, and today he's just fine. He's been fine since then. Now, that's unheard of, but he's fine. I have another close friend that got diagnosed with prostate cancer and just went to a local radiology center, had radiation, no specific doctor, no specific protocol, and he's fine today. I have a third friend who went to Cleveland Clinic, went to special doctors, got radiation, and he was fine for 10 years and it came back. So all of these stories and all of this really point to the fact that all of us have to kind of keep up with what's going on, because there is no one cure. There is no one thing that fixes it for us, as much as we all would love that.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Yeah, we're all individual cases. We all have to, perhaps ask the same questions, but consider the answers in our own unique case. Another hand just come up. Rick, would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, that I just finished the radiation therapy yesterday at UCSD, and I'm just real quickly interested in knowing if there's anyone else that has just had only radiation therapy, and what should I expect my first PSA test result range to be in.
Anyone care to comment on that? So, sorry, I was a little distracted answering one of the chat questions over here. You asked that if you just have radiation, and I assume you're on ADT as well?
No.
No, radiation only, no ADT.
Radiation only, no other medications or treatment.
And what other people's PSAs might have dropped to post-radiation?
Yeah, I'm trying to get an idea of what PSA I should expect for a good outcome.
Anyone have a comment on that? That is a good question, and it's I am not too familiar with situations where radiation is used and ADT is not used at the same time. So that's definitely a tough question to, I think, find an answer to. You might even have to dig back into earlier treatments from 10 or 20 years ago before they might have used ADT and hormone therapy so widely. Would you mind if I asked why you made the decision to not also have hormone therapy along with the radiation?
Well, the physicians didn't recommend it. They didn't offer it. I had a Gleason score contained localized prostate cancer, Gleason score 6s and 1-7, which was 3.3 plus 4. So it was intermediate in one biopsy, in one core, I mean.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, I guess that is fairly small, fairly low. And you have completed the radiation already?
Yesterday was my last treatment. My PSAs before the treatment were 2 tests. One was a 8 point something, and the other was a 7 point something back in October and then in December.
Gotcha. Well, congratulations on finishing your radiation. This time 5 years ago, I was right in the middle of it myself. And anyone, let's see, Bill and Bob, you both have your hands up. Do either of you have comments for Rick?
Yeah, I do. It's normal after radiation for your PSA to decline slowly, sometimes only after a period of years, because it's damaging the DNA. And then as it tries to replicate and so forth, then it gradually dies off. So it's not a plummet like you can get with, say, Firmagon or Orgovyx. Let's see, the other thing was, I forget. Oh yeah, that it's considered, I think, very normal these days with radiation to do some follow-up ADT. And I think the typical are 6 months or 18 months. And so if your doctor isn't talking to you about that, guess what? Get a new doctor.
Yeah, it never
Yeah.
hurts to get a second opinion or a third.
Yeah, my comment on it, I had the radiation there in 2008, but I was put on the ADT for 6 months before they started the treatments, and that was the standard protocol. But I was having everything directed by a medical oncologist, not the radiation oncologist. They were just doing what the medical oncologist was recommending. And of course, they cooperated and discussed it, I'm sure, between them. And that was with Dr. Lamb and Dr. Munt. And, they determined, when I would start the treatments. And, but I went on the ADT for 6 months before we started it to shrink anything and make the target easier. And of course, that probably knocked down a lot of the cancer, the localized cancer.
Yeah, well, then I'm puzzled because Dr. Munt didn't, I'm under Dr. Munt's supervision also for the radiation treatment, but he didn't recommend ADT.
Well, there again, that was recommended by the medical oncologist, not the radiation. As I said,
Yeah.
it was my treatment was being directed by a medical oncologist, not the radiation or surgeons. And so that was coordinated between the medical oncologist who recommended the ADT and then start the radiation 6 months afterwards. And then I believe I was on it for 4 to 6 months afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rick, I would be very interested to know in your next after your next meeting with Dr. Muntz, his exact reasons for not putting you on ADT. Dr. Munt is very highly regarded in San Diego and within this group, so he must have had a very good reason.
I trust him. He's been doing a good job as far as I know. So as far as I can tell, I feel confident with him.
Yeah, I know that one of the reasons why, when I was looking into treatment, I remember saying to one doctor, and I think this was actually to the surgeon when I had first looked at all the different options available, I just said, as long as I don't have to do hormone therapy, just don't put me on that. And having gone through 2 years of hormone therapy myself, I definitely have to say that I was much more worried about it than it perhaps it turns out in my situation I should have been. It's definitely something that sounds scarier on paper than it really was for me. And for those people that are considering whether or not to go on it, please feel free to contact me. And discuss it, if you do have worries about it, but I would definitely not shy away from doing it again if I needed to. I can definitely say that there's aspects of it that are life-changing, that changed my life for the better beyond just being part of what saved my life. So Rick, did you have more, or can I put your hand down here?
You can put it down.
Okay, thanks.
I have more.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I think if you look back at Dr. Metzger's talk last month, I believe he was talking about ADT when he said that the old standard, which was like what Bob had before, he said, I think now that the standard is during and after, but double check me on that. I think he was talking about ADT, and it's in the summary and in the video.
Yeah, for me, they put me on ADT for 2 months before I started radiation. And I forget when exactly they did the mapping scan, which was probably done about a week before I started radiation. So that would have at least caught any change in the tumor size on account of the ADT. And for me, my PSA, instantly went to undetectable, although it was only, just shy of 0.2 when I started the ADT. Bob August, did you have a question?
Yeah, just follow up on the conversation that was just happening, and thinking back to what Bill had mentioned in my my earlier question. When going to see someone who is truly an oncologist as opposed to a general urologist, it kind of jogged my memory to my experience 10 years ago. You're going to see the guy who's the medical oncologist or the radiation oncologist, someone who is specialized in a particular form of treatment. Who's the person is there a person you see that is helpful in guiding which direction to go with respect to the treatment? 10 years ago, the answer was no. You just go talk to everyone, and you're the quarterback, as I think is the general thought of, in the group here. And I found it fascinating that, being at Sloan Kettering, there was no one who was going to recommend, surgery versus radiation versus chemotherapy. Here's all the data, you decide. And is that kind of where things are today? The thing to do would be to, see one of each and then, kind of figure out things there. Or, I mean, I'm a pretty technical person, which is, I think, a blessing. I can look at the data and make pretty informed decisions. But at the same time, I'm not a doctor. So the person that could help with that seems like that would be really, useful.
And that's the medical oncologist. Okay, you may be confusing the urologist and the radiation oncologist, who both have a specialty to operate on. But the medical oncologist is supposed to look over the whole field, and he doesn't give you radiation, he doesn't do surgery, he just gives you the options and explains what your choices are. And then, yes, of course, you have to make your own personal choice based on lifestyle, blah, blah, blah.
Next month we have Dr. Lamb, and he's very detailed in his presentation. You'll get a lot out of his presentation next month if you are an engineer, because he goes into minute details on all of this. If I was you, I wouldn't miss that presentation next month. It'll help you make a lot of decisions.
Yeah, that's really,
he's awesome.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I assume he is in that category of medical oncologist you were just
exactly.
Yeah.
Any other names in the San Diego area that people recommend?
So I've been going to Dr. Rana McKay. She's at UCSD. She's a urinary oncologist. What was the proper term we were saying for that?
Medical oncologist.
Medical oncologist. She is in the urology department, so she does specialize in urological based cancers, and really specifically prostate cancer. She worked very closely with Dr. Rose, who is my radiation oncologist. But yeah, Dr. McKay is the person that I go back to that runs the tests, the PSA test on me every 3 months, and has really been following my care for the last 4 years. So she really has been an excellent addition to San Diego for us down here. Not the easiest to get in to see. You have to submit the details of your case, and she might accept it. She might pass it to one of her colleagues, I believe. But she's really been excellent for me. Bob, did you want to jump in here?
Yes, I tried to see her originally when I had the rising PSA and had concerns, and they denied it for 2 different reasons. One, she was going out on pregnancy leave, and the other one saying that she only did advanced prostate cancer, and she was in research with that, and she saw patients that were advanced, and at that point of recurrent, maybe, I didn't qualify. And I imagine I could see her at this point as a second opinion. I probably will do that.
Yeah.
So, but the other thing is, the reason that I saw a video that UCSD has, and she was being interviewed by one of the administrators along with 2 or 3 other doctors, and she just had huge enthusiasm. And as a researcher, and I always want somebody who's enthusiastic about what they do, and they'll dig a lot more and strive for excellence. And that's so I think she would be a good choice if you have advanced prostate cancer, but if you're in the early stages, I doubt if they'll assign her to you.
Right. And one other thing to understand too is at least at UCSD, my understanding is a group of doctors get together to discuss your case before treatment goes on. So even Dr. Munt was involved when they were reviewing my case before deciding, okay, yes, we're going to move forward with ADT and radiation on this patient. So even if you don't end up getting in to see Dr. McKay herself, she might end up having some influence on or some comment on your particular case. But you certainly raised an excellent point too, where many times if you go to see a surgeon, the surgeon is not going to tell you, oh yeah, you should also get an opinion from a radiation oncologist. We have a lot of still old school doctors who, 30 years ago, they were the expert. They had all the information. We did not. And what their decision was the way that things move forward. Many doctors today are certainly open to sharing their information with other doctors and essentially allowing the patient to make their own best informed decision. It is really what we have to do. We have to be proactive to go out to multiple doctors to get the real story from themselves in the different specialties. It's definitely worth doing. Any follow-up, Bob?
Yes, with Dr. Munt, when I saw him recently, and I had been scheduled with Dr. Kane for the biopsy, and then he pushed it out another month, so instead of getting it real quickly, it was, for whatever reason, it was going to take a while. And he said on Tuesdays, they all get together, and then he would recommend that they move it up, and which they did. And so he says the whole group gets together, and the same thing you had said, they talk to each other, and he says that the doctors are not shy about contradicting another doctor or coming up with a different path. So
yeah.
So they definitely do have group meetings every week.
Yeah, and as well as some of the most important, or I should say, one of the most important things, at least when the imaging goes on, is to have somebody who's experienced reading the image, reading the MRI, the PSMA scan, so forth. That person being excellent at interpreting the image. And once you've had these MRIs or PET scans, you can ask for a DVD copy of the images, and then you can go off and have somebody else read those and interpret those. So even if you don't feel that you got the best interpretation of it, or it was somebody that ended up being a little bit junior, it shouldn't be hard to get those images into someone else's hand for a second opinion. And I know that certainly with my MRI, my CAT scan, my bone scan especially, those did get into other people's hands, and there were different opinions. When I had my bone scan done at the age of 43, the technician that had given it to me and read the initial scan said, "No point doing surgery on this guy, he's got cancer everywhere." And when a more seasoned radiation oncologist looked at it, he said, "No, there's no bone cancer here. You're 43 years old. Had this been a scan from somebody who was 80, yes, this is cancer everywhere, but you had this super scan that occurred. And in fact, there was no bone cancer anywhere in my case." So the diagnostics can perhaps be, generic themselves, but the interpretation of them could be taken to multiple doctors for different opinions. Bob August, anything you wanted to continue with on that?
No, I guess, part of what I'm deriving from this discussion is the group at UCSD is, in the local San Diego area here is a good place to focus. And, so that's part of my takeaway here. And I appreciate that.
Yes, and I've heard recently that some of the UCSD doctors, I think it was actually Dr. Muntz, specifically has been recommending our group to some of his patients. And I would also say that, and I've seen a couple people on here that not just one of our speakers, but I know a couple other people in the last year went to some doctors, a trio of doctors at Scripps, and thought very highly of them as well. I've been hearing great things from about some of the Scripps doctors too.
So that's interesting to me. I am since I moved to the area, Scripps is where I focus just for general health care. Mm-hmm. When I first got that result back in January, I made an appointment with one of the urologists who I had met. I had made an appointment with some years ago when I first moved here, just to have a contact in the the urology arena. But for what it's worth, it took me, the earliest appointment I could get was back then was the end of April. It took 3 months to get in. And so I think for me, that's not bad timing. I'll, repeat a PSA test, we'll see where we are there, and, then go from that point. But, just trying to be prepared if in fact there are things I need to do on this journey that, we, take best advantage of time.
Yeah, I've certainly heard where a 2-month wait, for me, a 2-month wait was fairly common for a lot of situations. I've heard at UCSD, sometimes, it's like, this is a very high priority case, get you in that week. I know Scripps obviously had the hack issue and had to even essentially shut down all scheduling for 2 or 3 weeks. I think it was last year, and that likely caused some delays that they've probably caught up on. But I also imagine there that a 2-month lead time for a appointment is probably pretty common, especially now also that we're coming out of COVID, and there's much more of a flood of people catching up from the last 2 years of not going to doctors, as well as now having much more advanced cases that have to be referred to specialists. Bob,
is there a particular,
John,
if I can just ask, is there a particular location within Scripps? They're pretty spread out. Is there a particular location or one of their hospitals or institutions that is the focal point for urological matters?
Yeah, John Love, were you going to comment on this?
No, I just had 2 questions. One is related to this. When you say Scripps, are you talking about Scripps Green Hospital, or are you talking about the Scripps Medical Hospital Group?
Oh, that's a good question, because I don't know the difference myself. John, did you have your operation at Scripps?
So I haven't been operated on, but I'm being cared for by Dr. Kane at UCSD.
Okay. Sorry. I guess there was, unfortunately, the person that I do know that had gone through Scripps is not on anymore. But I want to say it was a trio of doctors that are up at Scripps in Encinitas. So my guess is that the oncologists are only in one or the other of those organizations, whether it's Scripps Green or Scripps Medical. Tell you what, why don't you contact us through the website, and I will try to get the names of those doctors to you at Scripps and find out, which organization they're in. Sound good?
Okay, appreciate that. Thanks.
Okay. So yeah, back to John.
So I think what might be considered a not great question, but the question of when to pull the ripcord came up a number of times today. Mm-hmm. I hate asking this, but do you know anybody who waited too late? Like that, I'm engaged in active surveillance, and I'm really good at ignoring and just, after the initial diagnosis, it was a shock and it was bad, but I kind of feel like I'm ignoring it a little bit too much at times. Do you all know of anybody who should have done something and and didn't and paid the ultimate terrible price?
Well, I haven't
Yeah.
paid the ultimate terrible price, but certainly had the doctor that, and I wasn't really on active surveillance. I was on what this inexperienced doctor thought was, the proper way to follow active surveillance and change your diet. But he definitely did not recommend that I go to a specialist. Ended up, making me not think that it was serious enough, such that obviously once I did, I had to go through, surgery, radiation, ADT, the whole 9 yards, even though I probably would have gotten away with only one of those and not been stage 4 had he addressed it early on. We do have folks that are on active surveillance for 20 years and, have done little outside of the regime of active surveillance for, in the way of treatment. So obviously they don't have any of the side effects of either the medications, the surgery, the radiation that we talk about. But I would say that, pardon me, that if it is I guess I would have to say, if it is a question, then it probably should be answered sooner rather than later, which means, pursue treatment sooner rather than later. So, John, why don't we talk offline some more and help you through whatever decision you're thinking about right now.
Actually, I've had good results. I had my PSA checked 8 months or June 2021, and it was 4.31. And I just had it checked 2 weeks ago, and it's 4.24. So it went down a little bit. I also had been trying to lose weight, and I had been fasting significantly. And I'm wondering, I'm thinking could be correlated. That could be a good thing. But I don't know. I just kind of feel like I'd love to ignore it, and not do anything. But then I'm afraid, like, is there any evidence, or do you know of any people that ignored it and ultimately, shouldn't have ignored it?
I don't personally have any names. I'm certain there are plenty out there. I believe in other people can jump in with some suggestions, but certainly monitoring the PSA, I would say no longer than a 3-month interval. Getting it checked every 3 months so that you can jump on it as soon as there's any amount of spike up would be at a minimum what you would want to do. And then the question becomes, well, over a 3-month interval, how high might somebody's PSA spike? And, I believe I've heard cases where, it could double or, go up by a factor of 5, say going from like 2 to 10, in a 3-month span for particularly aggressive cases, not the run of the mill, I would say. Again, I'm no expert on that. But anyone else want to provide some suggestions on this one?
Yes, I definitely do. First of all, I would say you need to get to a medical oncologist, not deal with a surgeon. Surgeons, even great ones, love surgery. That's what they do. And they know how to solve a problem. And they're not being malicious or anything in doing the surgery on you, but if they had done surgery on me, they would have killed me, basically, because at that time, chasing, the other thing you need is the imaging and being able to determine where in the prostate that the cancer is. If it's all contained within the capsule, I guess surgery is, could be called for, but if it's outside of the capsule, like it was with mine, they would not get it all. And then I would be facing radiation and chemo after that. And at the time that I was going through it in 2005, through 2008, I delayed by using the ADT, the basically a chemical castration. I don't know if anybody, androgen deprivation therapy, triple hormonal blockade, using Lupron, Casodex, Avodart, throwing them all in there, it can stop, the PSA and lower it to near zero for, quite some time. There are side effects with that, but that's all. It really need to talk to a medical oncologist, not talk to a surgeon or a radiology or radiation oncologist until it, gets to that point that you need that. But that imaging that was what saved my life. When they determined that it was outside the prostate in the seminal vesicle, then surgery, as the surgeon said, when that was presented to the surgeon, she said it would be ridiculous to do surgery on me because they wouldn't get it all. It would then, you'd take out the prostate and you have all these edges left around and there's no target anymore for the radiation oncologist to aim for. So and number one, just get to a medical oncologist who specializes in prostate cancer.
Yeah, John, did you say if you'd had a PSMA scan?
No, I have not.
I've heard that it's still not necessarily the first line of imaging that doctors are going through, but it has been picked up to be covered by insurance and FDA within the last 6 months, I think. And it is certainly the best scan these days to be able to tell you where exactly the cancer is. So yeah, as Bob said, if the cancer is already outside of the prostate, it's definitely something that must be addressed, as soon as possible. If it shows that it's well contained or something, then you might have a different consideration on choosing when to move forward with treatment. But yeah, it's certainly the best picture that we have of where the cancer actually is.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I also, I'm going to try to make an appointment with Dr. McKay, but I have a feeling like Bob, since it's not, late stage or advanced, that, and I don't mind, I agree that all the doctors meet, they have weekly group meetings. So even if it's not Dr. McKay, I think I'll be in good hands with somebody at UCSD, whoever.
Yeah, and UCSD does do the PSMA scans. I believe they call it Pylarify, and I'm not sure whether they actually do it there at their facility, or I want to say somebody was being, there was a facility up towards like Escondido or something where it was. I'm not sure, but certainly they can get you the scan, and I would say demand it.
Is it like a radio labeled antibody that binds to that antigen, or is it like a CAT scan or MRI? Like what's entailed in that type of scan?
I think Bill Lewis knows quite a bit about this. Bill, do you want to jump in, or maybe Mike, one of you?
It's a PET scan. It's a real simple PET scan at UCSD. It take you about an hour. It's no big deal. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I have heard that there's versions of the PSMA scan that are both done as a PET CAT scan, but also as MRI. Bill, were you going to chime in on something there?
Yeah, I was just going to say that in the case of the PSMA PET, the diagnostic scan, what they do is they attach the radioactive element to a molecule that happily sticks to PSMA surface proteins on cancer cells wherever it finds it, and then it lights up in the scan. And then there's the separate treatment where they use a more highly radioactive material called lutetium at the moment. Although Dr. Metzger last month said copper's coming along, but that gives actual lethal dose to wherever it sticks. But the diagnostic scan just gives enough radiation that their sensors can pick it up and determine exactly where those hot spots are.
Can I have one other comment on it? As I remember from years past, there were escape points that if the cancer was in the apex or the perineural bundle or something, and I can't remember all the places. There were 3 main areas that if the cancer was there, it was more likely to escape. If it was deep in, other areas, it could stay there for the rest of your life and you'll never do anything about it.
Yeah,
So
I think one of those was the nerve bundles, the nerves. It likes to travel along the nerves and
right.
escape.
That's
But I
I
don't remember the
remember
other two.
the paraneural bundle. I remember that in Apex, and I can't remember the third. And that came from a lecture when Dr. Duke Bond was, a radiation or a radiologist. As I said, he was very good at imaging with ancient technology. Now we have the MRI and this PSMA, and that should show where it is. And then somebody to properly interpret it and let you know what you should do about it, your options, because if it's deep in there, just keep following it. If it's right on the edge where it's going to come out, because you don't die of prostate cancer as metastasized prostate cancer. You worry about it leaving the prostate, and the only reason to really do anything to the prostate is depopulate it or whatever. Get rid of the mother load and the chance of it escaping. So matters, that imaging is vital.
Yeah, on my biopsy pathology report, there was, I believe they said, evidence of paraneural invasion was the wording used. And I, of course, ostrich sticking my head in the sand, trying to think that, that doesn't mean that it's escaped, but it's essentially where the cancer kind of grabs hold of a nerve, and that's how it gets out of the prostate, I guess. And sure enough, in the pathology post surgery, my margins were clean, as it turned out. However, there were 2 lymph nodes outside the prostate that were invaded. So this paraneural invasion sounds like it's the type of way where it's not a tumor growing past the edge of the prostate, but it's something where it can just essentially shoot out elsewhere. Bill Lewis, did you have more you wanted to say? I see that your hand's still up. So I will lower your hand, Bill. Go ahead and.
Yeah, my hand was lowered. So, had been lowered, but I'm good right now. Thanks.
Okay, good. There was one question that came in on the chat asking about what diet I personally am on now. I must admit that I'm not the best when it comes to diet or exercise, especially this last year of sitting in my home office. I do tend to try to stay away from red meat. Sometimes I do that better than others. I'll perhaps go a month without red meat, and then we ended up going out to a school function and they had tacos with meat on them, and that's what was for dinner. So I know that many times staying away from red meat and refined sugar are 2 of the most important things to do when trying to prevent the progress of prostate cancer. Avoiding dairy, I was suggested no more than 2 eggs per week. Moving to, say, goat yogurt instead of cow yogurt, if you want to keep something such as yogurt in your diet, is good. And obviously plenty of fruits and vegetables, low carb diets and so forth. I am going to direct the question though to Bill Manning, who I think is on, because I know that he follows a pretty regimented diet. If Bill, you're willing to go ahead and unmute yourself and chime in on this, because Bill has been pretty strict in his diet, pursuing much closer to a vegan diet that has been very successful for him. Unfortunately, I have heard that beer is, especially hoppy beer like we have in San Diego, is a no-no for prostate cancer patients.
You're dribbling.
What's that? Let's see, I think that was about it on diet. Anyone else want to comment about their diet regimen?
Yeah.
Sorry, I was unmuted for a second, so I'm ready to go when after this next person.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead, Bob.
Okay. I just wanted to comment because when I first saw Dr. Lamb, he was very big on diet and exercise. And I immediately dropped almost all dairy and red meat. And I've stayed off of eating any kind of beef, except if it might be a little bit on a pizza or something. Incidental is what I call it, but I haven't had a steak or a hamburger since. And the exercise, and it proved out very quickly when I did go on a vegan diet. I was not able to stay on it, but I went on it for about 6 months when they were scaring me to death. And once you kind of get a feel for where you're going and you see a path to get by it, you slip a bit, but it's difficult. But I have stayed off of the red meat and dairy, except for I love cheese. But anyways, that was my experience with it, and my PSA dropped dramatically within a month or 3 months, I guess, after starting that. You know, as I said, from that 2.2 to 1.43 without treatment. So
it's a great way to.
Oh, and there's also a nutrition department at UCSD, and Dr. Sachs, Gordon Sachs, is really into diet, and he's dealt with prostate cancer research, and he's one of the professors there, and he is he's trying to get me into more of a plant base, all the way down to doing cooking classes. So that's a really good resource there in the integrative medicine department. So
Integrative
that's
medicine.
all I had.
Trying to remember that department recently. I saw Dr. Slater there when I was undergoing radiation. That helped me out. Yeah, one of my, I was lucky enough to have a close friend who was going through breast cancer treatment at the same time I was doing prostate cancer treatment. And she is very attentive to her diet. But one of her mottos as well was everything in moderation, including moderation. And, you know, the thing to remember is that, you know, as the first sentence of our slides say, prostate cancer is just 2 words. It's not a sentence. You know, we are going to continue living for 20 years. So you have to make sure that you're still living and enjoying life. And, you know, it's a choice. If you want to give up all of these types of things in your diet and you're still happy with that, go for it. But, you know, do what you need to still maintain a good, happy life, because a lot of the outcome of our treatment also involves our state of mind. Myself, I did reach out to for mental therapy to a therapist who was even just helping me through some of the decisions on what I needed to do in this stuff, and it was invaluable to getting to where I am today. So let me go back to Bill Lewis. You wanted to say something again, right?
Yeah, there are various levels you can go to, and I appreciate your remarks. But you know, the classic recommendation that Jean Van Vliet follows is the Mediterranean diet. Okay, and that's pretty good. And then there's, as was talked about, the vegan diet that Bill Manning mostly follows, and it's not clear whether he actually ever had cancer, but he's been cancer-free for 10 years or something, and very healthy. But then you can go deeper, and anybody who wants to do that, I ought to forward you various documents that I have that you know, you can go all out or go where you're comfortable.
And I believe that on our website, there's links to a couple of books. One I believe is called the China Study. Which is
that's
good.
And knives over. Let's see, Forks Over Knives too, is one of our books.
Great. And there was another one. I want to say that Dr. Schultz has some books a lot of suggestions on how to eat healthier. I can't remember any of the titles off the top of my head, but we could dig something up if you don't find it on our website.
You may be thinking about Dr. Moyad, his buddy.
Sorry.
That does, yeah. And Dr. Moyad has a book on cancer nutrition or some such term. But if you look up Mark Moyad, it'll pop right up. And I suspect we have a copy of his book. If we don't, we'll get one.
Yeah, good point. And I do recall that one of the things that I had to that was pointed out to me is given that tofu is a highly recommended source of protein while being able to avoid red meat, it can be the type of food that can, if too much is consumed, especially while on ADT treatment, it can have some side effects. Yeah, tofu is a little bit of a double-edged sword to just look into a bit if you eat a lot of tofu while on ADT.
Yeah, I think it generates estrogens, which are generally not good for cancer. And also, you would want to have non-GMO based tofu.
Yes. Very important. All right. Any more questions? I'm happy to stay here and answer. This has been one of our longest meetings. This has been great. But I also want to let our speakers go if you've certainly been very generous with your time, everyone. So I'll take that as no further questions. So you know what, a round of applause for our speakers today. Thank you so much for sharing so much. You've helped a lot of people today for sure, and will in the future with additional views of this video online. Take care.
And for our facilitator.
Oh, thank you.
You've been wonderful.
Thanks a lot. All right, take care, everyone. See you next month or soon.
Bye.
All right, bye-bye.